Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
And a happy Thursday to you as we start to pick up the pieces, get our footing, getting back up off the ground, and working towards solving some problems, both within the Democratic Party and the United States on the whole. Are you starting to feel a little more weight under your legs? Are you starting to feel a little bit more ready to get up off the mat and start swinging? Well, let's start with something that I don't think we've done a very good job at combating, both in public discourse and obviously in legislative halls, courtrooms, and we are dealing with the repercussions of that at the federal level, at the state level, and yes, even at the county level in counties like Cobb County, a blue county, a county that Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Stacey Abrams twice while running for governor have carried, and yet a county whose Republican minority clings to power at county school board level, at county commission level, pending litigation, and even here at the state level in the state of Georgia. The dirty word is gerrymandering, and it works for the minority in power. Okay, you're saying, Ron, Republicans aren't the minority in the state of Georgia. No, they're not. But they're not the overwhelming majority. And unfortunately, that's how the state House and the state Senate would lead you to believe if apportionment were happening in a way that reflected the will of the people. This piece in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution today, crafted by Mark Nisi and Michelle Baruchman. Oh, I know her. Headline, redistricting plans come true. Republican-drawn maps kept them in power in Georgia. And listen, the way the election results played out 2 Tuesdays ago, that was likely going to be the case even if we had fair maps. It's the gap between the majority party and the minority party that is a bit of the problem, which sometimes plays out when you have to have a minimum threshold on certain types of legislation in certain chambers. The article begins, the election played out just like Georgia Republicans intended when they redistricted the state last year. With newly drawn districts, Republicans maintained power and held every seat in Congress and the state Senate, while losing only 2 seats in the state House. We followed the redrawing of maps and getting kickback, from judges and redraw this, and we followed this for months on this very show. The GOP was doing their dead level best to minimize the impact of census map redraws. The results of the election, according to the article, were effectively preordained because new Republican-drawn maps sorted voters into the uncompetitive districts, making them overwhelmingly Republican or heavily Democratic, with the outcome never in doubt. Listen to this. Just 10 out of 236 seats in the General Assembly were decided by a margin of 10 percentage points or less. Of those, the parties split their wins. 5 Republicans, 5 for Democrats. Republican legislators knew what they were doing when they crafted new district boundaries, said Ken Lawler, chair of Fair Districts Georgia, who has been on this show, an organization that advocates for more neutral maps. He said, these people aren't stupid. They have computers and sophisticated data. You know who else would? A bipartisan commission that would draw fair maps. Just an idea, just going to throw that out there. Anyway, Lawler says, absolutely, the maps tend to drive the outcomes. With more fair competition, the legislative chambers would be in play every election. And isn't that what we, the voter, would want? Instead, we tend to keep re-electing. I say we're voters. We keep re-electing folks into office who vow not to change that because we're so swayed by our hyper-partisanship. I mean, would you, as a liberal, ever be encouraged personally to vote for a Republican who says, yeah, I want to get rid of gerrymandering? I mean, if that were the one issue, would you consider it? I mean, trust me, you're never going to be faced with that. But that's the point I'm trying to get to. The hyper-partisanship and the fact that you are drawn into a congressional district or a state house district or a state senate district where it's not even competitive. By the way, that drives down voter participation. Your participation in, if not the top of the ticket elections, the stuff down ballot, you may not even pay attention to who your state house district combatants are because, it's a foregone conclusion. And when you look at the results, try this sometime. Go to the Secretary of State's office and look at the results of the elections from the top of the ticket on down. The overall vote totals dwindle as you get lower and lower and lower. This article continues, Mark Nisi, Michelle Baruchman writing, instead, while Georgia is a closely divided state in statewide elections, Republicans command outsized legislative majorities. Republican Donald Trump won this year's election by 2.2 percentage points after Democrat Joe Biden had a 0.2 percentage point margin of victory in 2020. And the state maps didn't reflect that. Republicans will hold a 9-5 advantage in Congress, a 33-23 lead in the state Senate, and a 100-80 margin in the state house. Do the math. It's not a gap of 2.2 percentage points. Article continues. The election results match predictions from when the General Assembly passed the new maps. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported the expected outcomes nearly a year ago. You could predict this that long ago. Rather than praising the maps, Governor Brian Kemp credited Republicans' success to strong candidates and campaign spending in competitive districts. Again, that was split 5-5, those competitive districts. His leadership committee invested heavily in supporting the GOP's candidates for the State House. He said, when you have invoices that are $500,000, you're doing a lot to help State House candidates. He said that at an election watch party. He said he was, quote, laser focused on a lot of these really tough swing districts. $500,000. When you only have to invest in 5 districts out of 180, 10 districts total out of 180. That is 1/18 of the state in a state that is a swing state at the top of the ticket. In a 51-49 state, the Republican Party commands 56% of the state house. I mean, I guess it's close. It's 59% of the state Senate. It's never been that outside. It hasn't been that outsized since before President Obama ran. And listen, I understand with inflation, the economy, global conflicts, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, with energy prices, with fascism, abortion, all these things on the ballot. Gerrymandering kind of comes in, not even on the list, right? It doesn't come on the list. But if you're going to talk about democracy, and we have this eloquent, romantic litany of speeches that we give about preserving democracy. I'm a little wonkish about this because when I hear that, I just kind of chuckle. We're not trying to preserve democracy. We're not even trying to have democracy. We're doing everything but democracy in this country. And I know I'm a bit of a political cynic, but facts are facts. The right wing will tell you, we don't live in a democracy. No, we don't. We absolutely do not live in a democracy. They like to tell you that we live in this representative republic that somehow allows the will of the minority to oftentimes exert its will over the majority. And we put that into effect. Again, sometimes at the county level, Cobb County, I see you. Sometimes at the state level. And of course at the federal level. By the way, for all the talk about the Electoral College, we came really, really close to getting rid of the Electoral College last week. You're like, Ron, it wasn't even on the ballot. It wasn't even up for discussion. Oh, no, I get it. But do you know how close we came to the GOP suddenly hating the Electoral College? It would have taken about 345,000 more votes in 3 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. In those 3 states, with 345,000 more votes, Kamala Harris would have won the presidency and lost the popular vote. They'd have lost their shit. You think that they spent 4 years grousing about the 2020 election when he lost the popular vote and the Electoral College? Oh my God. They'd have been flinging shit from the monkey cages. All it would have taken, 345,000 more votes, placed in the right spots in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Kamala Harris would have won 270 on the dot electoral votes and lost the popular vote. Throw in another 305,000 in North Carolina and Georgia, and it would have been an electoral college landslide. She'd have still finished with 2.6 million votes less than Donald Trump and won by a 302 to 236 margin. They'd have lost their shit. You think January 6th was, oh man, let him win the popular? That's how close we came to losing the Electoral College. And I've come away from saying, oh, we need to get rid of the Electoral College. It's impossible. It's baked in. But what you can do is you can insist that we eliminate gerrymandering. You can insist that we uncap the House. There's nothing keeping the House of Representatives from growing. It hasn't changed since the 1930s. The population of the country has tripled since then. Uncap the House. You uncap the House, you should have 1,200 representatives, I would say at minimum. You uncap the House and you've fixed the Electoral College, because the states that are so much larger than the smaller states, the Wyomings to California, with its 66-1 population disparity and its only 18-1 Electoral College disparity, well, that disparity gets closer to the population disparity when you uncap the House. We got to start talking about this, and we got to start talking to the American voter. And listen, I just spent 12 minutes getting kind of wonky about it. We got to do better about that too. It's got to be 60-second sound bites, or 2 minutes tops, 3 minutes on social media in a video, or something along those lines that let people know, you know, your vote's being taken from you, right? Your representation is being chosen for you, and in a lot of states, and Georgia's becoming one of the more populous states in the country, where our electoral heft, our muscle behind our presidential vote could be taken from us in deference to a state like, I don't know, South Dakota, with as many people in South Dakota as there are in Cobb County. Just something to think about. Donald Trump is looking for reparations for white people. Author Dante King of the 400-Year Holocaust is on to react later in the show. Thank you for listening. It's The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. You can follow The Ron Show on Blue Sky. I'm there now. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, at Ron Show ATL. I mean, I'd invite you to follow on Twitter X as well, but I'm not going to be putting a whole lot of content on there anymore. Just going to keep that account open. I've closed 2 others just to keep my eye on things. I mean, maybe one day we'll have a scenario where Twitter is reclaimed, although I think it's probably going to merge with Truth Social and just become even darker and more depraved, which is kind of funny. I try and tell people and candidates and the Democratic Party, sometimes you got to go where it's not safe, where you know you don't have the majority of the votes, to get the votes you do have enthused and maybe change a few minds in the process. There are a lot of places where it's just not smart to go. I will say this. There aren't many candidates, there aren't many Democratic activists or spokespeople who will go to Fox News and sit down and take questions. Remember how big a deal it was that Kamala Harris sat down with a Fox News anchor to take questions? I've said many times before, Pete Buttigieg doesn't mind doing it. He's a really smart guy. He goes in there, he knows his facts, he knows what he's talking about, he says things succinctly, and you come away amazed that it was so easy for him on Fox News. I have for many years, and I'll give this guy credit, he has been supportive of my efforts in launching this show and seeing it grow. He is a diehard conservative. He's from my hometown. His name is Austin Rhodes. He hosts a radio show there. He has his social media. Well, for the most part, he just focuses on Facebook because that's where the demographic he's looking for is. Anyway, I've, for many years, never hesitated to go on his show. I've been on his show once or twice, but I mean like literally on the show page and chime in. He thinks that Donald Trump choosing Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense is a brilliant move. He's totally for that. I actually chimed in on a post because he had said something about not being so wild about the choice of Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. An absolute batshit decision, by the way. One that I don't even think Republicans in the Senate can approve. Matt Gaetz is not popular with Republicans that he works with in the House or the Senate. In fact, the House committee, the ethics committee investigating, was supposed to release findings on Friday. So he quickly stepped down on Wednesday to pursue being Attorney General, which I don't think he's going to get. So he'll be out of House seat. Fine. Great. Whatever it takes. And not have his Attorney General's spot, if I had to guess right now. Okay. By the way, if you're counting, that's now 2 congressional seats and a Senate seat in the state of Florida that Ron DeSanctimonious will have to schedule elections for here pretty soon. Interesting. Is Florida in play? I mean, I don't know. Maybe when you take Trump off the ticket, we've seen outcomes do things that are a little more favorable for Democrats. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, in Austin Rhodes' defense of Pete Hegseth as Department of Defense, I had to chime in on his social media account that Hegseth didn't pass 2016 Republican vetting for a lower-tier DOD gig. But 8 years yammering away on a studio set has somehow magically made him more worthy? That's right. Justin Higgins tweets, while at the RNC in 2016, I vetted Hegseth for an undersecretary role at the Pentagon, and he wasn't qualified for that much more subordinate role then. No amount of conservative spin will make this guy a qualified choice for Secretary of Defense. To which Austin says, Pete Hegseth comes with far greater credibility than your future of the Democratic Party, Pete Buttigieg, did to cabinet. Ivy League educated war veteran, Bronze Star in battle. I had to remind Austin, and Google is your friend, buddy. Wikipedia is right there. That resume, Ivy League educated, war veteran, recipient of medal, is identical to Pete Buttigieg. Like Hegseth, Pete Buttigieg is Ivy League educated, war veteran, recipient of the Joint Service Commendation Medal. There's also not this huge gap in serving the public good for Pete Buttigieg to have gone on cable television for a decade or more. Aside from being mayor of a pretty good-sized city in Indiana and working in conjunction with the DOT and the Indiana DOT on municipal and regional matters, he also received a Bachelor of Arts degree with first-class honors in philosophy, politics, and economics after studying at Pembroke College in Oxford. When you hone in on the economics part, that's where majors study transportation, which is the application of economic theory and methods to the transportation sector. But I digress. And remember when I say sometimes you got to go where you know you're outnumbered, where you know things aren't all that. I've made a lot of friends from chiming in on the Austin Roadshow page from across the country who follow this stuff. This guy, Mark Schaefer, actually chimed in and says, in addition to what Ron wrote, Buttigieg also transformed downtown South Bend by leading a Smart Streets initiative, literally a transportation program that garnered national recognition. Imagine someone saying this about Augusta. He then quotes from an article. I wish he had shared the article, actually. His signature Smart Streets initiative brought much more than aesthetic changes. They argued that a more pedestrian-friendly downtown spurred more than $100 million in private investment, as several key buildings found new life, new hotels, new apartments, new restaurants. As one owner of a new downtown hotel said, everything kind of came together and it's cleaned up the whole area. You've got a different image when you go down there now compared to years ago. Mark Schaefer finishes his statement on the Austin Roadshow social media account at Facebook. Buttigieg had demonstrable qualifications. Pete Hegseth had a weekend gig on Fox and Friends on the Fox News channel. Yesterday, I talked at great length about what I believe has radicalized the white male, mostly heterosexual, but the white male voter. And it appears that Donald Trump has long realized that is a fertile base of support he has, and kowtows to them. He is fighting DEI tooth and nail. In fact, offering, in essence, reparations to victims, I'm using air quotes, of DEI initiatives at the college level. He's offering reparations to white people. And so naturally, I wanted to reach out to my friend, Dante King, author of the 400-Year Holocaust, White America's Legal, Psychopathic, and Sociopathic Black Genocide and the Revolt Against Critical Race Theory, to get his response. Not only is he the author of that book, he's got a docuseries coming out that we'll talk a little bit about. He's also a professor at the Mayo Clinic and teaches from time to time at UCal San Francisco as well. Looking forward to getting his reaction to Donald Trump. I don't believe I'm being hyperbolic or caricaturizing this. Literally offering reparations. Well, he used the word restitution. Maybe we should start using the word restitution when talking about reparations for African descendants of slaves. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not blowing this out of the water. We have audio of that edict coming from Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago and Dante King's reaction as well. When the Ron Show returns on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you.
The irony of him saying that is sort of laughable. And so I guess the lesson learned is, for those who seek reparations for African descendants of slaves, stop using the word reparations and start using the word restitution. Joining me to discuss, frequent guest of the show, returning champion, Dante King, who is author of the book, The 400-Year Holocaust, White America's Legal, Psychopathic, and Sociopathic Black Genocide, and the Revolt Against Critical Race Theory. Dante, I don't even hesitate to ask how you're doing, how you've been, but I already know the answer. We're all sort of in this funk and this haze since election night. But it just seems to get worse with each passing day and announcement and rollout of a new cabinet member or a new edict. We just got yesterday the story from Donald Trump that he's seeking retribution for anyone who feels like they've been wronged by institutions implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion into their enrollment. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know where to begin or where to start. I do believe that, in clinical psychology, there is the reference often of the term narcissistic injury. And I think that the recounting and the retelling of history that places or centers white people as the perpetrators of terrorism, of past harms and ongoing harms, where both indigenous people and Black people primarily are concerned in our nation's history. White people have very strong adverse reactions to that. And so when I sit here and I share with you from a factual standpoint that the head rights system that was in place from 1619 to roughly 1779, I believe, that afforded, white European people predominantly 30 to 50 acres of land if they purchased an enslaved African person. They were awarded 50 acres of land. If I share with you from a factual place that in 1862, the same year that President Lincoln was signing the Emancipation Proclamation into law, he also signed into law the Homestead Acts, which provided, again, white citizens of the United States, as well as European white immigrants, roughly 160 acres of land, and all they had to do was fill out an application, receive the land for free, live on it for 5 years, and then the title would be transferred over to them. That recounting of factual history that centers the way in which white institutions have functioned on processes and systematic functionalities of white affirmative action and white sponsorship, that seems to be so offensive to white people. And so Donald Trump is a malignant narcissist. He's a sociopath. And of course, this would be the reaction, because this, again, is a form of both individual and collective narcissistic injury.
But we're not going to know any of this history if we're not ever taught it. And we know that there has been a push not to teach this history. And now for the next 4 years from the top down, even with apparently the evisceration of the Department of Education, it's even less likely to be left up to the states to have a proper reckoning of American history taught.
Right. So it then brings into view and calls into question, what then will we be studying, or what will we then refer to as history? You know, what history counts? What history matters? What facts matter? Apparently, all of the facts do not matter, or we can even create our own facts based on the environment we're in and all that we've been hearing and seeing from Donald Trump and people who support him over the last decade.
Let me ask you this. There's obviously been a call for decades now for reparations for African descendants of slaves. There's never really even been so much as a commission on it. It's something that a lot of folks have been sore with the Biden administration for not even launching that conversation. Is the word reparations a problem? Because it seems like the word restitution works.
Reparations, restitution, none of it works if Black people are the target, or if the goal is to compensate Black people in terms of what we have endured and how we've been disenfranchised and oppressed in America. Whether we call it reparations or restitutions, Donald Trump's objective and his agenda is about getting even, where he feels that white people have been aggressed or offended. And he is making, this is not only is it a political move, but it is an affirming, a reaffirming of white supremacy and a prioritizing of white people's feelings and their humanity and their total existence as individuals and as a collective group. Make no mistake. I mean, this is just, he's an unserious person, but he's very serious in this moment.
Yeah.
And again, he and others who are like him, who are operating from the same value set or set of value system, they believe that this will just reaffirm white people in their whiteness. White people should not have to suffer learning about the horrors of all the terrorism that was committed in the name of whiteness to provide a platform that advances, white privilege and the value that is ascribed just by being white by default.
Well, that's
in this society.
Well, that's because students tell their parents, or maybe it's the other way around, that they come home feeling ashamed. And obviously, we know that that's a ruse. We know that's absolute bullshit. Pardon my French, but that is the crutch with which they lean on. I was actually kind of half joking about changing the word reparations to restitution because I think it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. A wrong is a wrong. When you talk about fairness or payback or retribution or whatever that he seeks, it almost seems like I think he's an easy to manipulate man, and that it may just take someone in his inner circle having this conversation with him. I just don't see him surrounding himself with anybody that's willing to have that conversation or has in his 78 years of existence.
I agree. And I think that he doesn't understand, too, that he is standing or centering something, positioning it, something that is a hot button for Black people. And it has the potential to really ignite a racial war, because if the government finds a way to allocate funds to provide restitution or reparations to white people who have felt offended, it's going to cause mass destruction in certain Black communities across this country, And it's going to be an ugly situation because then law enforcement will be brought in,
Yeah.
and we are potentially headed towards a massacre.
Yeah. No, that's my worry as well. I'm also seeing a lot on the left, and I've been spending the last, 3 or 4 days on my show trying to bring the players back into the huddle so we can call another play and that we're all still on the same team. In fact, what we're seeing some on the left is taking the helmet off and walking off onto the sideline and quitting the team. And what I see is a lot, and I know it's talk on social media, and it's just that right now, and emotions are very raw. But you're seeing a lot of the mind your business, mind my business, minding my business from specifically African American women who feel very much, and I understand, injured from the loss that Kamala Harris suffered, and the perception that women's rights have taken a back seat. Hispanic men turning towards Donald Trump. I argue that I get it. The emotions are raw, but we have to stay on task and stay on the same team and understand that the running back may want to run the ball more. The wide receiver may want the ball thrown to him more, but at the end of the day, winning is what matters, and being on the same team matters, and we've got to get back in the huddle.
But if you're a part of this team and you know that your position is never to be positioned as the winner, but always the loser. Because it's not just that Kamala Harris lost, right? It's that, and this is very different than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, for all of the stains or the baggage that people said that she came with, her qualifications were never questioned.
Right.
And it's not just that Kamala Harris lost, but it's all of the aftermath of the commentary that we've been hearing about what she did wrong and them basically sanctioning her or positioning something that she did or didn't do as the reason for her losing or her campaign. When we know that we live in a misogynistic, anti-Black culture, and in a culture that is particularly hostile towards Black women. And so I think all of these variables in Black women feeling very isolated, very targeted, aggressed, it's not even just about losing. It's more than that. It's about a denigration that is tied to this collective cultural thought process that Black women lack value and worth. And that's true for Black men too.
Were you in any way surprised when we look at vote totals and see that, speaking of Black men knew they knew the assignment. Black women obviously knew the assignment, but there was so much doubt about whether or not Black men were going to know the assignment and to show up and support in the sort of percentages that Democrats anticipated. Well,
it's interesting because Stephen A. Smith, who's a sportscaster, journalist, he was interviewed on a talk show called The View. And there was a panelist, I think her name is Sunny Haas, and she asked him a question, or someone asked him a question. Did you think that Kamala Harris would lose because of the way that Howard Stern had proposed that Kamala Harris was going to lose because of the ways that men talk about women in private? And Stephen A. Smith says, I wish that Howard Stern had been more specific. Howard Stern should have talked about how white men talk about women in private, because Black men have respect for Black women. We have respect for our mothers, for our grandmothers, for our sisters. We're used to seeing them in positions of authority and leadership. So that's not a Black male issue or a Black male problem. And I took issue from the very beginning about the demonization of Black men as it pertained to them not supporting Kamala Harris and not supporting Black women, because I knew that it was all a farce. And I remember when I first started getting requests to interview and give a perspective on this topic, and I said, I don't believe it. I would need to see data or actual factual proof. And people kept saying, well, this is what all the polls are showing. I said, those polls were wrong in 2016. And I believe that it's just another tool of division. And what do you know? Black men were not the issue. Hispanic men were the issue. White women were the issue. White men were the issue. And a supermajority, to a degree, of Latino women. Yep.
So it would seem that and I've talked a lot about this over the last few days as well, that the focus of the campaign, and I don't have any faults with the way Kamala ran her campaign. I thought she ran a pretty good campaign, especially given the circumstances. If anyone wants to quibble about anything on the left, it's I believe President Biden stayed in the race too long, or even got in the race at all. He should have been a one-term president. But it would appear that issues other than the central issue of the campaign, which was abortion, were very central. And it's the one thing that you actually did hear a lot from voters of color about. The economy and inflation, and the framing of the argument never seemed to really come together on the left. That, listen, it's the pandemic. We're recovering from the pandemic, and we've finally gotten this under control and managed to keep unemployment low and keep us out of a recession. And lo and behold, now inflation's under 2.5%. Why alter course now? I don't even know where I'm going with that. I guess I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I'm going to take a quick break. However, we are on with Dante King, adjunct assistant professor of medical education at the Mayo Clinic, guest faculty at the University of California, San Francisco, and author of the book, The 400-Year Holocaust. When the Ron Show returns on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Final few minutes with Dante King, author, professor. His book, The 400-Year Holocaust, now available, by the way, and you can go to danteking.com if you would like to purchase that. He's also got a new docuseries called Documenting Whiteness and Anti-Blackness that is coming out soon. We're talking about the re-election of Donald Trump, the litany of mediocrity that he is putting up for votes on cabinet positions, and his deciding that he wants to offer restitution, aka reparations, to anyone who he feels were victimized by diversity, equity, and inclusion in the college campus.
In all of what we're discussing, though, I think the part that baffles me that I don't see circulating in the mainstream commercially is the mediocrity of Donald Trump. Yeah. The fact that he
or how about this? How about this is right up here. The mediocrity of the white men that have championed him. I mean, I just had a thing yesterday talking about Joe Rogan, who was nothing. He was nobody, and somehow got a reality show that was much ado about nothing, and started a podcast that was much ado about nothing, and still on this podcast gets fact-checked all the time and corrected all the time. He's not a bright man, and yet he is the leading podcaster on the planet and a kingmaker in political and societal circles now. And the fear of DEI from white men is much more to do about their mediocrity. If they're so damn irreplaceable, then they wouldn't be replaceable.
So that's a mic drop moment right there. You said everything that I was going to
I'm a white man. I'm a white man. I'm a white male college dropout myself. You know, I know my shortcomings. I know when I get replaced by somebody better than me, I don't care what color or gender they are. It's because I was mediocre at something.
Well, I so appreciate you and just our connection from the moment we met, because we've been able to have this type of discourse. And me being a black man, I wouldn't be in this space talking to you if I didn't have the education that I have, if I hadn't, done all of the work that I've done. So it just doesn't work that way. And so when we talk about the value that is placed upon maleness, the value that is placed upon whiteness in this society, it's unquantifiable. And there's no comparison between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is the most qualified person that's ever run for the office of the presidency. She's worked in all three branches of government: senator, she was a state's attorney general, and vice president. No other person has that resume, okay? And here you have this mediocre person, because of all of the rites of passage that come along with his maleness, with his whiteness, and that's not being talked about at all. Instead, we want to talk about these nuances around, the left couldn't get their messaging together. This issue should have been emphasized more than this issue. And we're not talking about a man who put together at the last moment a convention, a white supremacist convention in New York City. Yeah. It's right. With people who got up and said that America must be kept American. That's what Calvin Coolidge said in the early 1920s. Before, I think it was either before or right after he signed the ban on Japanese people, the ban on African people. So, I mean, what are we even discussing here? It's like people are existing in alternate realities and trying to have discourse. Yeah.
But there is this palpable fear, too, on the left, that, trust me, I sense it, that there is a fear of focusing too much on issues that people see as divisive. The needs of the African American, and again, reparations for African descendants of slaves, immigration, or dealing with DACA recipients and trying to make whole their existence in this country. And now I feel that there's a palpable fear within the Democratic Party. Can we even have a woman nominee again? Or can we even talk about abortion again? When actually that's a winning issue that won on the ballots. It just didn't translate to wins for the candidates at the top of the ballot.
That's right. I agree. And I don't know if there could have been enough money raised to do the type of outreach that is needed across this entire country, because some of the feedback that I received had to do with people who were in states where there were no issues around abortion, right? And those people were not as motivated to go out and vote. They didn't feel dialed in about that issue. So I do think that nuances like that help to decrease some of the could be support that could have been captured.
Well, I pointed this out yesterday afternoon, by the way, that in 3 states that Kamala Harris did not win, with an additional, I think, 345,000 votes, she would have won Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And by the way, still lost the popular vote, but won the presidency. The irony of us turning the Electoral College on its face like that. The right, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world, would have been wanting to eviscerate the Electoral College right away if Kamala Harris had hit 270 with those 3 state wins and still losing the popular vote. I don't know where I was going with that either. I just thought I would point that out. But, there's obviously
That's a great point.
Some structural issues that have to be worked out. But again, many of those issues won't be worked out until the right falls victim to them. And
I agree. I absolutely agree. But I do believe, too, that that's where we're headed. There are so many people who voted for Donald Trump who don't understand how their daily lives are about to change, how their families' lives are about to change. The guy that was just appointed to be the head of immigration, he's going to lead the immigration efforts. He stated openly just several days ago that if deportation required the deportation of family members who are even American citizens of the United States,
then the family goes.
Then the family goes too.
Yeah.
He's talking about taking a universal, comprehensive approach.
Which could take some Trump voters with him. And never mind the economic impact. I mean, Elon Musk all but confessed, there's going to be a little bit of a dip in the economy as a result of all of this. I mean, he accepted that. It's
because he's a billionaire. Right.
He ain't going to feel it. Donald Trump ain't going to feel it. No, you're absolutely right. 1,000%. All right. Well, I'm glad you had some time to talk with me. I know we both come away still feeling frustrated about all this, but my drive to try and coalesce what I believe has to be a response to the right-wing ecosystem of disinformation, we have to continue championing the left-wing ecosystem of actual information, facts, data, logic, math, science, all those things that have liberal biases. And that's why I know I've got a handful of folks that I can count on to have top conversations on topics that are within their realm. And Dante King, author of that fantastic book, The 400-Year Holocaust, you are one of those people, man. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I have a new docuseries coming out. It's called Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness. If you go to diagnosingwhitenessandantiblackness.com, you'll be able to see the array of about 10 episodes that are there listed. It'll launch December 7th. So thank you, my friend.
I will put that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Dante King, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Yes, take care. That's something we have to remind ourselves to do for and to ourselves and each other. That is going to do it for today's Ron Show. And tomorrow is another day, right? And we'll awake to see it. And I will join you here. 9 to 10 a.m., replay 5 to 6 p.m. on America One Radio, 11 p.m. to midnight at Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Show notes at ronshowatl.com. Have a great day.